I'd like to welcome everyone to the June 25th, 2020 audit meeting for the Moreau Town Board. And we've got a couple of vouchers for minor discussion on. Where did Jeff go? The first one is voucher. Actually, I don't have the voucher number in front of me. Do you have it, Jeff? Vouchers for discussion.
They don't have voucher numbers yet because
they don't. Okay. So the first one for discussion is in relation to Business Automation Services Incorporated. It's for the annual bill license for BAS module. Because it exceeds $1,000, we need approval to make that purchase. It's similar to the system that we've already approved for payment for the clerk's office. What is the total amount?
$3,070.
It will be in the amount of $3,070, and that would come from account B3620.4.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion?
This, I'm assuming this is basically some computer software.
Yeah, it's part of our annual software agreement to be able to access BAS system. I don't know, do you want to offer any more on that, Leanne? How does your office use the system?
It's the same thing. They use BAS for their building department software program. I use BAS for my town clerk and my taxes and my water. And there's just, a fee that they charge per year for the maintenance agreement on it.
Okay.
So if we have any issues, they help us out with that. And they update the software and everything periodically.
So this is just for the building department?
Yes. And this is for the whole year?
Correct.
Yeah. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And then the second item I have for discussion, this is from Paul for the highway garage expenses. A while back, the board had approved a purchase order for the repair of highway truck number 13, which is the 2012 International, in the amount of $3,800. This was back on April 28th. And the total cost of the truck exceeded what the town board had approved by $78.20. So we need to increase the amount that the town board is going to provide authority to pay that voucher in the amount, actually it's $3,878 more.
Correct.
And this was for I believe it was for a module, electronic module on that. That's proprietary for the International Truck Company. And so what we would need to do is authorizing the total purchase order to be increased up to $7,678.20. This money would come out of equipment repairs, which is account DB 5130.405.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion?
I guess I'm surprised that they were off by so much.
I think what happened was when they got into it, there was another software problem.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, Paul will not be able to attend the meeting. If you want to table it, I'm okay for further discussion.
Well, it's not going to change the price for me.
No,
bad. So and honestly, this doesn't happen a lot with Paul. Everything's usually pretty close to what it comes in at. That's a big difference. That's not my initial reaction was the same as yours. I thought it was $78.20.
Yeah.
It's not, it's more significantly more.
It's twice as much.
Yeah.
So twice as much.
But it's not going to change anything from time. And again, this isn't habitual where things are off this much. So.
And let me just check to see if I have supporting documentation under on the regular agenda. You have it? Yeah, so in an email on May 4th, Paul had indicated that there are more problems and parts needed for that truck repair. He says when they took it apart to install the new EGR, they had to flush 2 coolers at this time, and they found the hot side to be leaking into the engine with antifreeze, and they found the cold side to be 3/4 plugged with debris from a bad EGR valve. Now with the extra parts and work and engine flush, the total repair will be approximately $7,800 to $8,000, depending on the total time for labor. And he says he looked up the parts online himself. The total alone for 3 different vendors, they all exceeded $6,200. So they're all in the ballpark for it. This truck was already there, I think. So that's how they got to the total amount that I just reported.
Thank you.
You want to see the voucher?
I'm fine with that, no, thank you.
Paul?
No,
Or I'm sorry, John?
that's okay.
No.
I've seen,
All
I
right.
remember the emails and I remember the conversations and thinking that this was a truck that had hired a lawsuit filed against the company. It was-
Can you let Gina in? Can you let Gina in the door? Sorry.
That's okay. That thought, what that said, it was kind of like, there was a class action lawsuit on this vehicle. And, but the timing of it didn't happen.
Right, well, we weren't willing to settle for the flat amount, so we still retain the rights to pursue that if we wanted
Which
to.
is that potential on this.
Yeah, we can chat with Carla on that a little bit later.
Okay. We're gonna wait on it. We'll go.
Sorry. Got myself on there.
We're pleased to be joined by Council Member Leclerc. So we've got, we're still going through the vouchers for discussion, Gina. And we're on the one for, from Paul in relation to Delray Sales and Service for the repair to the truck number 13. I was telling the board, we had approved a repair to that truck back in April, approximately $3,800. When they got into the repair, there was a lot more that needed to be done, and essentially doubled the cost of the repair. So now we need to do an amended or a new resolution increasing the cost of the repair to $7,678.20. And we have a motion and a second. We're on discussion now. So.
Any questions by that talk?
Yeah, I know. So anyway, if there is no other comment, then we'll call the roll. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Do you need signatures on anything?
I do. On the 4 discussions, and 1 additional.
All right, thanks. All right. So on this, and I'm just, on the business, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there's an additional $900 on this for more. So there was,
For an additional user of the software. Typically, the assessor's office has someone who uses the software as well, so they can look up the codes for the buildings inside of the town. There was an additional license used this past year with the code enforcement officer, so the assessor is paying the extra amount for their license.
okay. So the total voucher amount is $39.70 versus $30.70. Is what I'm looking at. That information came through was $30.70. This is showing $39.70.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. So this second part is because it comes from the assessor's department, it's not subject to the total. So you guys need to approve anything that's over 1,000, which is this one invoice.
Okay.
Here, it's only the rest of the.
Okay, got it, thank you. That explains it more. Ready?
So we have the signatures.
The second one needs to be signed. Okay. Thank you.
Three.
Thank you.
All right, since we have all of our required signatures, there's no other discussion for any other vouchers for this month. I'll entertain a motion to pay the bills as audited.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Does anybody have anything else for the audit before we close? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the audit meeting.
So moved. Second.
Any opposed? We are adjourned, and we will start the regular town board meeting in approximately 13 minutes, 4:30. So we'll stand at ease till then. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to a regular meeting of the Moreau Town Board for June 25th, 2020. And just want to apologize for the short notice of having to change it from yesterday to today. And I appreciate my colleagues working to get us the following day on the docket for a meeting. Unfortunately, yesterday, the town of Moreau, particularly Town Hall, lost our internet. And as a result, we were unable to comply with the open meeting law. And so therefore, we're unable to hold the meeting. So that's why we're having it today at this hour. And we couldn't have it our usual meeting time of 7 p.m. because we have a zoning board meeting here tonight. So that's why we're having it a little bit early, but we are having it anyhow. So with that, I'll ask for a roll call from the clerk.
Councilmember Hogan.
Here.
Councilmember Noonan.
Here.
Councilmember Leclerc.
Here.
Councilmember Donahue. Here. Supervisor Kuzma.
Here, and if that, with that, if everyone please rise for a pledge of allegiance. Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. First order of business here on the agenda, number one, is approval of minutes. And we actually have some corrections that we need to address. The first one is from it's actually from previously approved minutes. First set being from May 12th. We had some typos in there where council member was listed multiple times on a roll call. I think it was Councilmember Noonan was listed twice. Councilmember Donahue wasn't listed at all for 3 of the resolutions. We wanted to make sure that that was accurately reflected. So we will need a motion correcting the minutes from May 12, 2020, page 127, which is resolution 172, page 129, which is resolution 173, page 130, which was the resolution to close the meeting, to reflect that Councilmember Donahue, his name be inserted in place of Councilmember Noonan, who was listed twice in error. However, the votes are accurate and will remain the same.
Second.
Any discussion on that?
I thought Kyle was multiple personalities.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved unanimously. And then also on that same meeting minutes, May 12th, 2020, I had received authority from the town board in relation to a correspondence where we, in my correspondence, had authority from the board referencing a particular lot number in the industrial park. In that correspondence, the town board authorized a reference of lot number 6. And upon providing the letter to the property owners for their purposes of an application with one of the companies they're working with, they realized that was not the lot that they were referring to. They were referring to lot 7 instead of 6. So with that, I would entertain a motion to correct the minutes. I've already corrected the correspondence that was sent out from my office to indicate that the resolution in reference to the Moreau Industrial Park reference lot 7 in place of lot 6. Any discussion?
Only that I have no idea what lot 7 or lot 6 is.
They're right next to each other.
I hope it's so. But are they like down back or are they up?
No, if you drive in, see, you and I walked down through when we were looking at the Niagara Mohawk or National Grid right-of-ways, where they were dumping garbage, target practicing, and where we're in the process of installing a gate there. I believe lot 6 is on the north side and lot 7 is on the south side.
Do that dirt road
Yeah,
is there, yes,
we go-
because then the next pieces are,
Right,
is the town's.
right, so it's across the dirt road from each other
Okay,
on the left.
okay. General idea, okay.
And I have a map of all the lots if you want in my office.
At some point, I'd like to look at it just to see what
Yeah,
we're.
yeah, and we've got it, I know the assessor's office has it as well, so either way, we can get that to you. So any other discussion? All in favor of that change? Opposed? Motion carries to make that change, and you've got that for your records?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. And the resolution was 2020-170 on page 124. Would that agree? All right, I don't have it on the agenda, but I'll just give a brief update on COVID for Saratoga County. As of,
Can I just interrupt for 1 second? You didn't approve the minutes from June 9th. Do you
oh,
want to do that before we jump into that?
yes, absolutely. Thank you for keeping me on track, Leanne. So with that, we'll move on to the unapproved minutes of June 9, 2020, which was a regular town board meeting, and I'll entertain a motion to approve those.
So,
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Leanne. So moving on to a brief update on COVID-19 here in Saratoga County. To date, we've got a total number of confirmed cases of 539. We're holding steady with deaths at 17. The number of recovered cases out of that number is 499. We still have 24 active cases with 1 hospitalization. And to date, 22,754 residents have been tested. So, you know, we've leveled off in our holding pattern here, which is good news, which is kind of counter to what's happening in about half the states elsewhere in the U.S. So that's good news. At this time, I don't have a requirement to set future meetings and workshops. We may at the end of today's meeting, but we'll address that then. I have on the agenda, just for discussion, I wanted town council to just update the board. I noticed she has provided a draft to me as well as board members in the multifamily dwellings, a proposed change to our local ordinance. Do you want to just cover what was changed in that and what would be the next step, Carla?
Sure. So you all have the memo. As you recall, this board has issued a moratorium on multifamily dwellings in the town of Moreau. It's been extended 1 time, and the moratorium ends on August 30th. So I know that sounds like a long way away, but as we all know, that's really not that far away. So what I've done is gone through the zoning code, gone through everything, with some information from folks as to where you want multifamily housing and where you don't want the housing and what it actually means, and that what is a 2-family dwelling as opposed to a multiple family dwelling. As I looked through, 2-family dwelling is actually not defined in your code. One of the reasons we're redoing the zoning code. So what you'll have to do is, I've given you a number of different definitions you can use for a 2-family dwelling. Some of them came from the multiple dwelling law in the state of New York. Just because it is referenced in the code in places, it should be defined. So I have that in there. The other thing that I looked through is where multifamily housing is permitted. Right now, it's permitted 2-family and multifamily multifamily is only in the UR zone. 2-family is in R2 through 5, the RP and the UR zones. So the question for you folks is, if you want to just keep multifamilies, apartments in that one zone, and if you want to remove the 2-family from the other zones that it's in, or if you want to remove the 2-family from, keep it in some of the residential, take it out of the ag district, however you want to do it. That's basically what we've got in here. And if you look through, I went through your comprehensive land use plan and the farmland protection plan to give you some food for thought as to where you want these to be. I didn't draft the law because really it's not drafting it, it's more removing. So until you tell me what you want me to remove, doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to remove anything. The other thing I wanted to bring to your attention is the timeline. In order to make sure we don't extend the moratorium again, which you folks have said you didn't want to, under the statutory dates, it makes sense to really start moving this in the next couple of weeks to have your public hearings in July, so we can submit it to the state to kick back to be effective before the moratorium is over. It's not, so I gave you a fairly conservative dates, and they would have to go to Sarasota County Planning because it is zoning. They only meet a certain day of the month, so there's just moving targets. So that's basically what you have in front of you. I'm happy to take any suggestions. I'm happy to do whatever you tell me to do.
I will get through all the information you sent.
I love to a lot.
You might have. But I'll get back to you.
Okay.
I will also get back with you once I can read it, write some notes on it and think about it. I think considering what, water and what's happening with our water in the town, how we go about dealing with multifamily type of structures is important. So it's important, so like you want to give it some more time to digest and give you some notes.
I just had a question, Carla. Obviously, we're honing in on the R5 ag district. Do we still have, or will we still have provisions, because I think they're important, that allow for any kind of agricultural enterprise to be able to, if they needed to have, H2A workers where they come in, they live on the premises for a certain period of the year to help with the harvest or, crops or cattle, anything like that. The way it is now, would that be permissible? If somebody wanted to either modify or expand, like, bunkhouse or anything like that. There's something that happens more, it's more prevalent in parts of the state where you have fruit and vegetable type operations, but, we don't want to limit the ability of that type of enterprise in the town because of housing. Is that something that's accommodated?
I don't know if it's currently actually in the law. I don't know. I only say that because I remember a few years ago, there was some issue with somebody doing that, but they may not have been in the R5 zone.
Okay.
Because they put a mobile home on their property and they were using it for those folks. But it may not have been in the R5 zone. If it's something you want to keep in and you can use it as a special use permit part,
Okay.
a temporary permit, there's ways we can put that in there.
Okay, all right. I'll get you some of my thoughts on that as well. Any other comments on the draft? Okay, so we'll get that to you, Carla. I know that, it's kind of a pressing time schedule, but, I'm taking it as a guideline.
It is. It's really more, the push would be to get it to Sarasota County Planning. Because if we don't get it to them for their July 16th meeting, we have to wait till their mid-August
And it
meeting.
has to be in its final form, right? For that.
It has to, it has to be not approved by the town. Obviously, we can't approve it until they approve it, but I have to have a law drafted to them.
So so the board members will get your comments.
Yep.
I don't know whether the board would like council to take those under advisement, make those changes, or have another open discussion on it. Get it into its final form and then send it to county. It's whatever the board would like to do.
I mean, having it sent to county, we can have our public hearing still in July, even if we don't have it to the county. We just can't adopt it until the county comes back. So we may be adopting it at the very end of August, and that's fine. Just there might be a little bit of a lag, which between the moratorium ends, because until the Department of State approves it, it doesn't go into effect. So I don't know. I just want you to be aware of that.
Okay, that's what they're-
Thank you.
very good. Next item on the agenda, item 4, is the highway department. I'll start off just a brief update. We've got the entire new roof installed on the highway garage. The only thing they need to do now is do the penetration for the vents for the new heating system that's down there, which has to go up to the roof. We want to make sure that we have certification and approval with the manufacturer, so it doesn't avoid the warranty. So we're working on that right now. But I will say this, that in talking with the town's engineer, Paul, and some others, they were aghast at the workmanship that occurred when that first roof went on. There was no, the joints weren't sealed. There wasn't any foam installed. There was structural screws that did not go into anything. They indicated that if we had, a high windstorm through there at just the right time and location, we would have lost the whole roof. Now, that probably would have been good from an insurance standpoint because the town would save a lot of money on what we're spending to replace it. But anyway, that didn't happen. But we've done it right this time. We've had the proper oversight, and we should have it buttoned up here in no time at all. And that'll take care of another issue that has been outstanding for some time here in the town. Along those lines of the roof, this is a twofold issue. I first want to start out by saying that we have received our notification from the states what our CHIPS funding will be. And right now our portion is $240,682.16. However, all municipalities got a notification with their funding amount that there will be a 20% reduction right off the top, which takes $48,136.44. So what that does is it leaves the town with $192,545.73. So that's good news. We're getting some monies, not as much as what we wanted, and some of the monies that we didn't use last year was rolled over into this figure, according to Paul. Related, not to CHIPS, but to highway operations. I was in contact this week and heard back today from Senator Jordan's office that, if you recall, Senator Marchone had sponsored a $200,000 grant to assist us with the roof repair, which is about a third of the cost of the repair. The Senate majority has indicated that to the senators that it's highly unlikely that we will see that money anytime soon, with the state not having funding and putting a freeze on a lot of their grants. This is a state aid municipality grant. It's not just for this Senate district, it's across the state. But it has the real ramification that, when we put projects forward, predicated on the fact that we'd eventually get that money, it causes a hole in the budget. So that leads me back to the conversation that I had with Paul regarding CHIPS funding. And he and I agreed that of the 192, just over 192,000, because we do have a $200,000 shortfall, we would like to use $100,000 to help plug that $200,000 hole in the new roof replacement. So that would leave him with just over $92,000 for paving. The good news on paving is that with the low cost of petroleum, paving is down, doubled it 20–30% over what it was last year. So dollar for dollar, we can get more paving than we probably could have with last year's prices. Bad news is we're putting less money in chips towards it. So we took a look at he and I talked about the priority roads that we had outlined as we do every year at budget time, which roads needed it the most. I actually traveled every one of the roads, and he and I came to a similar recommendation on where the priorities will be, but he'd like to go out and revisit the list. And when he does do that, he'll get that list to me and I'll get it to the board members so you'll know what he's going to focus on. I do know that one of the things he really wants to take care of is Butler Road shimming. And if you're not aware, CHIPS funding can only be spent for capital outlays that will last 10 years or more. Shimming, I guess, is deemed as a temporary, it's not a 10-year fix until you do the top coat, and then it makes it, a 10-year fix. So anyway, bottom line is we're going to use $100,000 in CHIPS money. The board's okay with that for help offset some of the deficit in the roof repair, which is just about done. And we'll probably be looking at fund balance for the remaining $100,000. So taking $200,000 out of fund balance down to about $100,000 for the roof, and we'll still be able to get some paving in. So I'll get that information on the roads for that. Do I need a resolution on that? That's just administrative.
I would do a resolution just to have it.
So I guess I would be asking the board, since I did have a conversation in concurrence with the highway superintendent, for a resolution authorizing that of the monies anticipated to receive from the CHIPS program, that we earmark $100,000 of that for the highway garage roof repair.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I know that Jeffrey's very happy that I took care of half of his problem. So that is that. We have another request for repair for another international truck at highway. And I don't know if the board members received this or not. It doesn't show that. And I don't have a formal request other than an email that we received a quote from the same company that we talked about. And yeah. And this would be for international truck number 10. He has a quote, looks like the same issue, for a remanufactured EGR valve that includes credit for a core, with a sensor, and there's a core charge and a core credit. Bottom line is to repair that truck, we have an estimated cost of $2,891.24. He's looking for authorization to tell them that, so that he can tell them to make the repair. He indicates that we have available $24,861.57 in account DB 5130.405 for equipment repairs. It's not on a formal list. I don't know if the board members got a copy of it. If you don't, you can either take a look at it on my copy, or we can table it until the next meeting, because he's not here, if you have questions. I don't have a lot more information other than what that price is. Totally, whatever the board.
Is this truck currently out of commission, or is it?
I think so, because I think, I shouldn't say it, but it doesn't kick down into safe mode when that EGR valve goes. I don't know.
Based upon the last conversation with the other truck, I believe so.
So if you want,
I'm okay with approving going forward. If they need it at this point in time, then maybe we can't tell them to not use the truck.
you want to, Paul's not here. You still want to move forward with that,
Yeah, dedication.
even though we haven't received monies.
Yeah, I can explain it.
Such a big guy.
Yeah, he didn't say it's emergency repair, but, you know, it's totally whatever the board's
It's not
pleasure.
gonna change.
Well, good, it seems like they do change once
Well,
they get
getting
into
it
it.
in your
Sometimes I do
car.
change.
A couple, they never go down, I
No,
will say
that's for
that.
sure.
So, what would you like? Would you like to move forward?
I'm okay with moving it forward.
And a limit of-
Yeah, so then I would entertain a motion authorizing the repair for truck number 10, based on the price provided by Deli Ray. Sales and service out of North Hoosick, at a price not to exceed $2,891.24. Whatever you want to do.
I'm thinking 3,000, you got 20, you know.
I would agree with that, 53,000.
So I would make a motion to approve the repair of truck number 10 at Diore for an amount not to exceed $3,000.
So,
We have a second. We have
Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
I,
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Do you have the information you need?
I don't, but I can get it.
Okay. Also under highway, we have a resolution regarding the dedication of Timber Lane to the town of Moreau, and I know that council has even more information. I think you shared with town board members yesterday,
Yes,
but you do have some new information.
I do have new information. This is dedication of a road in, I think it's a 13 lot, 12 or 13 lot subdivision on Butler Road. And we've been working with Paul to go through all the requirements under your code. Paul has given a sign off that he thinks it's ready to go, and it's good to move forward to have the board accept the road. The little hiccup we had today was that the law required a letter of credit in a certain amount. There was a little discussion between developer's engineer and the town's engineer respecting the amount. Developer's engineer ultimately agreed with the town's engineer. It had to do with the fact that when the developer's engineer looked at asphalt within an all-time low, and when the town's engineer looked at it, they all agreed that asphalt is going higher. And obviously, we've been in situations before where we don't want to have to pay money in the event this doesn't work for the developer. So in speaking with the attorney for the developer today, we have all of the documents that we need. The only thing we don't have is the actual signed deed, which we will get after this. And we don't have the cash. What they're going to do is deposit the $57,000 in the town's coffers to hold as a separate line item. When I spoke to the attorney, I said, you know, the board could desire approve the dedication tonight contingent on receipt of the signed deed and the check, which we're anticipating will come in on July 2nd. So what you have before you is a slightly different resolution than you got yesterday. I think I sent it to you today, but I can't remember the word this afternoon. It actually has a second resolve paragraph that indicates that once you have the money and once you have the deed, then you are authorized to sign documents. Leanne, is that the one that I gave you?
I have no idea. Can I bring it over and show you?
It's the second resolve paragraph, the longer one. Yeah, no, it's.
Okay, thank you.
So that's, I mean, I have the resolution, I can read it, if the board wants to report any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I do know that, I believe they're watching, the developer is watching. I did indicate that there was no public comment at the meetings, so they're just watching to see what you folks are gonna do.
No pressure.
No pressure.
So then, do you have a copy of it now?
I have.
Okay, so I'll ask council to read the resolution, and then if somebody would like to move forward or continue the discussion, that'll be the board's pleasure. So go ahead, council.
It's a resolution accepting deed to Timber Lane dedication. Whereas Timber Lane Holdings LLC has offered a deed to the town of Moreau to dedicate Timber Lane, as more particularly described in the survey map entitled Map of an As-Built Survey for a Road Known as Timber Lane, dated December 16, 2019, made by Dara Land Surveying, PLLC, to be filed in the Saratoga County Clerk's Office contemporaneous with the deed. And whereas the highway superintendent and the engineer for the town have recommended acceptance of Timber Lane dedication for highway purposes. And whereas pursuant to Moreau Town Code Section 124-17, Timber Lane Holdings LLC delivered to the attorney for the town a warranty deed with lien covenant conveying Timber Lane to the town. And whereas pursuant to Moreau Town Code Section 124-17, subsection 1, and in agreement with the town, Timber Lane Holdings LLC will deliver a check to be held by the town in the amount projected by the fee estimate, as well as an affidavit affirming the installation of the top coat of Timber Lane. And whereas Timber Lane has already been improved as a street or highway in accordance with the standards and specifications for a town highway within the town of Moreau, and in conformance with applicable regulations and requirements and provisions of state law pertinent thereto. And whereas Timber Lane Holdings LLC has complied with all submission of all of the required documents contained in Moreau Town Code 124-17, including the providing of a title insurance policy named the town of Moreau as the insured policy and an as-built survey. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board on behalf of the town does hereby consent to the order of the highway superintendent laying out the said streets, and does hereby accept the deed of dedication on the said road to be known as Timber Lane. And it is further resolved that upon receipt of an escrow deposit in a sum not less than $57,258.89, and receipt of the duly signed deed transfer documents and those other certain items specified in section 124-17 of the Code of the Town of Moreau, the supervisor is hereby authorized and directed to execute any and all documents necessary to effectuate the dedication. And is further resolved that the town clerk is directed to record the deed in the Saratoga County Clerk's Office.
So we can move that forward for discussion. We can have a discussion, whatever the board's pleasure is.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that?
I drove it today. It looked nice. There's one house up in there.
Good. Glad to hear it. Hearing none, then all in favor?
You need a
Oh,
motion.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you moved in, we have a second, okay, I'm sorry. My bad.
That's okay.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
And I will follow up with the developers council with respect to the rest of the documents.
Okay, great. Thank you for doing the legwork on that. And I think that's all I have under highway, so we'll move on. Item 5 on the agenda is the standard workday. The town board had approved a resolution for the standard workday for the town assessor, Leah Cronin, based on the information that was provided to us at the time. However, we have to approve another motion because the previous motion did not accurately reflect the term of the assessor. I think she was in there for only 1 year. It's a 6-year term, as the board knows, for assessor. So we had to make that change. So do you have the resolution? Do you want me to read it?
I have just a brief resolution, if you want me to read it.
Okay.
Be it resolved that the town of Moreau will report the amended days per month to the New York State and local employees retirement system based on the record of activities maintained and submitted by those officials to the clerk of the body. And it has the assessor Leah Cronin, a 7-hour standard workday, but her term changed. It was stated as October 1st, 2020. It should have been stated October 1st, 2019 through September 30th, 2025. And the days per month recorded is 25.15.
Thank you, Leanne. Somebody like to move that?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Item 6 is I have listed as a water department with lots of activity to report on. First of all, the town of Moreau is using an awful lot of water. As a matter of fact, we set a record, I think, for the history of the town of Moreau yesterday, going over 2,030,000 gallons. Of that total, we were providing 122,000 to the village of South Glens Falls based on the IMA that we were able to work out this week. And that's down a little bit, about 10,000 from the previous day. The village, I think, took 132, 134,000. Of course, that day was a little bit hotter. Of that 2 million amount, 700,000 is coming from the county, and 1,330,000 is coming from the town of Queensbury. As I've discussed with the board, we don't have any additional capacity. So it's something that we need to move forward on rather quickly. A little bit later, I'm going to be asking for support to purchase that capacity this evening. But before I do that, I just want to thank the village for working with the town on coming to an agreement, an IMA, where we could get water to the village to meet their needs. I signed that 2 days ago. The town of Queensbury signed our agreement, which I had authority to do from a meeting in February. So that ensures that the village will now have a guarantee of water as provided for by the town of Queensbury. So thank you to the town of Queensbury as well for working with the town of Moreau. We had hoped, and I don't know if I mentioned this at the last meeting or not, I had conversations with the County Water Authority. I'm on the County Water Authority Board of Directors, and we were initially hopeful that the county could help in providing capacity that would meet the needs of the village. And when I provided with the numbers that the village wanted a commitment for, it was much larger than they had the ability to do for a short period. And they had concerns that they would not be able to meet the legal obligations of their current customers because they are in fact at capacity as well. That caused us to turn to town of Queensbury and we worked it out with them. So, it was a good multiple political subdivision involved in making it work so that everybody has water flowing today. As a highlight to, or I should point out a point to that very high number, which is a record for a town of Moreau. Also in conjunction with the village of South Glens Falls, the town issued a water conservation notice. We did a reverse 911 call that went out at 3 p.m. today, basically saying that until further notice, use of water for all the town of Moreau residents that utilize municipal water can only use outside water for outside purposes, i.e. water in their gardens or lawn, etc., between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. in the morning and 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. in the evening, with the 1 day period not to exceed 3 hours. So that went out at 3 p.m. It's in coordination with the village of South Glens Falls. So it was done jointly and they received the same call. So hopefully that's going to take a little pressure off of our usage until we get a little more cooler days and our water consumption is reduced. But as part of my conversations with the town of Queensbury, it was very important that the town move forward with the purchase of additional capacity. And so I indicated to them that I'd be bringing it to the board this evening to purchase capacity. I have worked with our town principal account clerk to find out how much money we have available in the 2020 budget for water districts. And I was hoping that we were able to purchase over $100,000 worth of capacity. Per the IMA agreement with the town of Queensbury, we can buy those blocks of 50,000 gallons per day of capacity at a cost of $53,000. So I have a resolution if the board wants to move forward. We have not purchased capacity for the town from Queensbury since 2008. And it's something that should have happened a long time ago. The capacity that we had always planned for our commercial district has essentially been redirected for some of our projects, multifamily projects that have been approved by previous boards. And so I think it's prudent that the town has the foresight with the commercial quarter coming online with sewer within the next year or so, that it's nice to have sewer, but it's very important to have water too. So my recommendation, because it's budget neutral for 2020, is to utilize $106,000 to buy that additional 100,000 gallons of capacity a day, just to give us some breathing room in there. I'd like to purchase additional capacity down the road, but I think under the circumstances within the financial confines that we have in the budget, this is a good first step moving forward with the 100,000. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Agreed. We've talked about it off and on for several
I
times.
didn't give you a resolution if you didn't have
I may have a resolution here. Could we write one? Make sure.
I have the. I have comments on it too.
You do? Hang on, almost to the end there. I think it's in the last page. I do have it, so thank you. Do the board members all have copy?
You and your comments.
No, I don't. So if someone is so inclined, I think the appropriate resolution would be offered that reads, whereas the town of Moreau entered into an intermunicipal agreement, IMA, with the town board of the town of Queensbury on behalf of the Queensbury Consolidated Water District on the 1st of February 1999. And whereas Section 9 of the aforementioned IMA grants the town of Moreau the right to purchase additional capacity from Queensbury, so be it resolved that the town of Moreau purchase additional capacity of 100,000 gallons per day from the town of Queensbury in an amount not to exceed 106,000 to be paid pre-audit and from all 6 water districts in the town of Moreau.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Council, you want to add to that change? Anything?
No.
Does that work for you?
That's fine.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and I know town of Queensbury will be happy to see that.
Just one thing, Carla, I know that JD is new, and I'm not sure if John or Carla will have this discussion here. Can you explain more clearly what the capacity does for what we're doing when we buy this?
Well, the way the Queensbury agreement is you have a reserve capacity and you have the right to purchase up to that amount. And our reserve capacity now is 1,250,000, so it'll be 1,350,000. And out of their 13 or 15 million that their plant can do. So you pay for the right for that water. So if you need that water, and that water is at a different price than the water you purchase in Saratoga County. So what that does is that allows you the water to come from Queensbury over the river crossing into it when Jesse determines it's necessary to flip the switch back and forth. That agreement with Queensbury actually is up this year. It's a 20-year agreement. It's up this year. And so with this is really good timing to work with the other attorney, which I haven't, for the new agreement, which will likely be another 20-year agreement at the new amounts. Because right now we have 4 different amendments to the current agreement. Does that help you? I don't know the real science behind it, but.
Yeah, I really don't think that it's the science. I think it really guarantees us they're going to hold capacity for us within their plant. And I didn't know if we've had a discussion about that when the rest of you were here.
So we have capacity of 1.25 million gallons a day, agreement with the town of Queensbury. We also have language in our, I don't know whether it's the IMA or the contract, that has provisions for a penalty. When we exceed over a 30-day period, we pay 85 cents per thousand per penalty and we get nothing for it. So I thought it was much better to spend the money to get something than to spend the money just for a penalty. So the penalty was 85 cents per 100,000. Is that right? I'm sorry, per thousand. And that'll allow us to buy water at a rate of $1.17 per gallon. So basically, you're spending money to get something, you're spending money to get nothing, and I think that's wise to do.
I think since Tim Burley was here, how many years ago was that he kept recommending?
Oh, yeah.
We just haven't done it, and I think sometimes the community that watches it, and people haven't had that benefit to be in on those discussions.
So, what it does is it continues to position the town for the future. And, to me, it's vitally important that, we as a board are consistently doing that. Because what we have found, and we're cleaning up some of those problems, if you don't, it just compounds the situation and makes it more expensive down the road. So we're being out in front on this issue. So did we call the roll on that? Did we
I
have a
think
roll?
we're all finished with it.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
I just thought we
Also along on the issue of water capacity, the Saratoga County Board of Supervisors has earmarked about $170,000 for economic development grants. And with it being setting aside 7,145 for each town, but they have to submit a formal application to get the money. And so we just did a formal application to use the full amount of the grant for economic development purposes to buy additional capacity, which, you know, with the intent of it going toward our commercial corridor, which is where our economic development most likely will take place. So that application was completed earlier this week, and I think it's already out the door, right, Jerry? So I expect that, you know, we'll hear good news on that down the road shortly. And if, for the public's benefit, anybody needs additional information on our water restrictions, they are on the town's website, which is townmoreau.org, and there's more information available for village residents on the village's website, which is sgfny.com. So, you know, and obviously you can call either the village or town hall, and we will answer questions too along those lines. So hopefully we'll see a reduction with that in place beginning tomorrow. Zoning administration, as I indicated at a previous board meeting, our contract with the LA group for zoning administrator expires July 31st, 2020. I have had conversations with Jim Martin, our zoning administrator. He would like to stay on. He would keep the terms of the agreement the same as they were for the previous 2-year agreement. If the board is inclined to move on that, we still have time. We don't have to take action tonight, but just wanted to update you that the price would be the same if we were to move forward with an extension for 2 more years. So I expect to take that up probably at the next board meeting, but just wanted to update you on that.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Number 8 is our telecommunication connectivity services agreement. And this is the result, I believe the state has changed vendors for telecommunication services. And so these are state contract prices. My recommendation would be to, you know, go with the contracted price, but I believe I still need a resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign the agreement on behalf of the town.
Motion to allow, I'd like to make a motion to allow the supervisor to sign this agreement on behalf of the town.
Second.
And I have extensive information on all the prices and the services. That's been
Communications Incorporated. Okay.
So, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Number 9 is, as we discussed at the last board meeting, Monolith Solar has been purchased by another company. And there's an estoppel agreement, I believe, as part of that, that basically I have to sign, even though there's nothing we can do about it, whether I wanted to sign it or not. Is that safe
It
to say?
basically just says that you are told that Monolith has been sold, and you were told that this is who the new person is, and everything is staying the same. The estoppel does set forth all the requirements, personal, the right data, and it says the escalation clause is the one that's currently in your agreement with Monolith. So there's nothing in that that has changed, So they verified that they're basically assuming the entire agreement.
So the resolution,
Would authorize you to execute the estoppel agreement.
right, do we have to have the names of the new company in there, I think? That's part of the resolution.
And this is the one where the estoppel agreement has one name, the new company
It's different.
is different, but they're related entities.
They are. So what I'd be looking for is authorization from the board to,
Use the name on the estoppel agreement.
yeah, I'm looking at it right now. It says a solar PPA equipment lease estoppel certificate and consent to solar PPA equipment lease agreement. Is that it? The name is. Have a name.
Down.
Well, this will be signed well, this says it'll be signed between, the consent agreement would be signed by the town and Monolith.
Yeah, it's not the town of Monmouth. So Monmouth provided you with the proper notice that they were selling. They did that on their Jamaican email.
Right.
They said they're selling to Sunlight General Capital. The assignee in the agreement is SL Empire Solar, Roman numeral 1, LLC.
All right.
So that's the SL Empire Solar 1 LLC would be who you're signing the estoppel agreement with.
So we have that at the end.
Yes.
So the motion would be authorizing the supervisor to sign the estoppel agreement with that entity.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
I do have a question, and I'm looking at like exhibit A. Or it's number 9, line 9. Is it any other than electricity rates after 2019, annual 1.7% escalator in January?
That's in the current agreement.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's in the
So
current.
in 2013, we had one model agreement.
Yeah.
So that's what was in that one as well.
Okay. Does that mean that it goes up that much each year?
Well, it's the escalator.
Yeah, I don't have all that documents in there, but that's what they can go up to each year. Yep.
They don't have to, but they have the authority to. People usually don't give up an opportunity.
No, we get it. I'm just thinking that's crazy that we're paying out there.
I don't disagree.
Anyway,
Any other discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 10 on this evening's agenda, I have listed as the Sewer District 1 Extension 5 update. Just wanted to bring the board up to speed. We're continuing to progress nicely on that project. We're to the stage now where we will be wrapping up easements for where the infrastructure will go on private property. And I had a conversation with the town engineer as well as the town attorney regarding whether we want to use eminent domain, whether we don't. My personal preferences, as someone who supports private property rights, that I think that that should be the last resort that we use. And as an incentive, one of the things that we can do is provide for a purchase of the right-of-way based on footage that we use. And it's not uncommon that some projects move forward that way. But to do that, we obviously have to arrive at a fair and equitable cost to the landowner for that right-of-way. So in talking with Don, one of the ways they do that is they will hire an appraiser just for that purpose. And he suggested that, knowing how I feel about it, I'm not sure how other board members feel about it, that we move in that direction. He indicated that there is money in the budget that should cover the cost of those right-of-ways. It's something that he does as standard operating procedure when he puts a proposal together. And, but, you know, we have to hire an appraiser. So my recommendation, if the board is in agreement, is that we authorize him to seek out appraisers, come up with a recommendation, which I will pass on to the board. And you know, this is something that we're going to need pretty quickly within the next week or so, 2 weeks or so prior to our next board. I think there's 3 weeks before our next board meeting. So if the board's in agreement, I would forward his recommendation to the board members for review, what the costs are, what their services will entail, get feedback from you, and if there's a consensus, give him the authority to move forward, and then we can memorialize it at the first board meeting in July, if you're okay with that. Or if you don't, you want to go in a different direction, that's, let me know your feelings on it.
I'm okay with it if, you know, again, like you said, it sounds like a standard operating procedure for the engineers who have done this before. You know, protecting private property rights, I guess, is important. Giving folks the option to sell it, I think is better.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with it.
And also, I think these people have paid taxes on this property all this time.
Right.
They're not making money on it, probably, we're figuring.
Well, it's not gonna be a huge
No, but
dollar
it's
amount,
still-
and they still retain the ability to use the property,
Yeah, and they're still gonna pay taxes.
and they're still gonna pay taxes.
It's just an easement. It's just an easement, not, you're not buying the property, you're buying the right to use the property.
But
And
it's an ability to cause a disruption to them.
Oh, I wanted it to be clear.
Yeah, and I was
You're not buying the property.
Right. And I wasn't assuming we were buying the property, I knew we were buying the right.
And I would just add, one of the reasons this has been precipitated is that under previous administration, there was never any easement secured for the water lines going down Route 9. So we're gonna do it right here.
Okay, that looks better.
So where are we? Do we have?
We get a resolution to allow, either John or myself to engage an appraiser after we discuss. I've reached out to a local appraisers who specialize in this sort of linear footage evaluation, so hopefully we'll hear back very soon.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize the supervisor to instruct the engineer to seek out appraisers and their services in order to purchase the rights, the use of these rights of ways.
Second.
You want.
I authorize him.
No, yeah, so you don't want the motion to say seek out. You want the motion to say you're giving the authority to retain an appraiser after due diligence by the appraiser and the board members prior to the next meeting.
Upon agreement by the board. Right.
Man, you got all that, right?
Oh my gosh.
Audio, don't tell me.
Are you good with it? You want to start?
No, I'm good.
Everybody good?
I'm good with it.
We know what we're trying to do.
Second, are you? Okay, we got a second from Councilmember Hogan. Are you sure you're okay, Lynn?
I think so, yes.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. That'll keep the project going, and we are on track to, be getting pipe in the ground. And we're looking at a conclusion of, we're hoping to be end of 2021. We may be a couple months into 2022, but regardless, we're still on track, and we've saved money on it, and we've applied for more money, free money. So, and in the meantime, we've added assessed value to the district, which benefits the current landowners. So it's all good. So thanks for that. We'll move on to item 11 on this evening's agenda, which is the draft solar law. As many are aware, and I know there's folks tuned in that have a keen interest in the direction the town board is looking to go regarding our draft solar energy law. I just want to, so this evening is basically the unveiling to the board publicly. I mean, you've received copies of it privately. And this is an opportunity this evening for all the board members to, as part of a discussion, provide input, possible direction to the town attorney. This is, as part of the process, this is the starting point. It's not the ending point. And we will get this to a point collectively as board members of where we want it to be for the public's input. And then we will open it up for all the public to have all the opportunity in the world to weigh in, let us know what they like, what they don't like. And then we will have the ability to decide whether we want to make changes, we don't want to make changes, based on what we're hearing from the public. So this is the beginning of having a formal document. And we've been going through this process for some time. And I'm going to ask council just to give a brief overview of where we started and how we got to where we are this evening.
So we're actually at almost exactly the 1 year mark from where we started with the initial moratorium. This came up back in, the public hearing was actually on June 25th of last year to have a moratorium on this. If you recall, we set up a moratorium so we could get some more information about how to do with solar laws. The town of Moreau does not have a solar law. The only place in the town of Moreau where solar is arguably permitted is the industrial zone. And it's only permitted there as a power plant, and I believe by special permit. So if there's nothing specifically in our law saying solar is allowed. The zoning department under the prior zoning administrator and continued under Jim Martin has interpreted power plants to be where we can fit in solar energy. It's a little vague, ambiguous. That's how the town has been doing it since Joe Patrick amended to Jim Martin. The moratorium, so at this point, it wasn't allowed anywhere else anyway. It wasn't allowed in the ag district, it wasn't allowed in the commercial district, nowhere but industrial. Moratorium went into effect last summer. Todd and I met here in town hall with some of the NYSERDA, for the summer or fall, some of the NYSERDA folks, their council, and some of their other individual, and went through what the town would like to do and how important it is, and we sat with them for an hour or more to go through everything. They provided us with all their documents, and there's been ongoing communications with them. Moratorium ended up, and so you're aware, this has been before, at least on a town board agenda 5 times. On an agenda 5 times, specifically in the last year, but I think it's been discussed at least by members of the public. Every meeting, every other meeting, someone has discussed it. The moratorium expired. We had to adopt a second one to keep it into another 6 months. If you recall, Mike Valentine over at the county said, you're gonna end up having to extend this. You're not gonna get this all done in 6 months. You should probably extend this, but the board wanted to say, we'll do just 6 months, we can do it. Hindsight is 2020. 2020 is 2020. So February 25th, you folks put the second moratorium into effect. We received the, Jim Martin had drafted a first draft of the law. And we got it right then. He sent it to me right about then. And then COVID happened. On March 10th, you had scheduled a meeting, a town board meeting with NYSERDA, which was supposed to happen on March 31st. Obviously, could not happen. Since then, I have spoken with the folks at NYSERDA again, because there's new state solar siting laws out there that didn't come into effect until the budget was passed in April. We have looked at the farmland protection plan that you folks have, the comprehensive land use plan, the solar laws of Milton, Wilton, and Northumberland, and Greenfield, and probably, you know, Livingston, out of, Moreau County. Probably at least 15 different zoning laws, plus the model use law. Between myself and Jim, we put together the law in some consultation with the supervisor as to what we took the model law that I certainly recommend you use, and we tailored it to what we thought the town of Moreau would be good for the town of Moreau, especially with the town's unique emphasis and protection of its farmland. So what you have before you is a fairly, I think, a good compromise. I mean, between protecting land and, you know, protecting, you know, the land and protecting the landowner. Again, this is your law, this is not my law. So what I would recommend is we can go through it. I want to thank you for your comments that you presented to me. Jim has answered a number of them, and I know Jim's spoken to a couple of you as well. I spoke to Jim earlier today, and he indicated he spoke to some of you folks. What I would indicate is that you're on the same time frame with your moratorium as you were with the multifamily, that if you want to not extend the moratorium, then you either have to understand that you are gonna hurry up and pass a law, which you may not have thoroughly vetted, but you may, you know, if you're good with it, we get through. Or you understand that moratorium goes away, solar is only allowed currently in the industrial zone. That's kind of where you're at. I think that's everything.
Yeah, you know, I'm committed to not doing another solar moratorium, so along the same lines, I also want, you know, if we're going to have a solar energy law adopted by the board, I want us to make sure it's the right piece for the town of Moreau. So me personally, I'm not going to feel compelled one way or the other because the moratorium is going to sunset. But, you know, we'll continue to take however long it takes for us to come to a consensus on a solar energy law that meets a majority of the residents and the landowner needs in the town. So do you want to go line by line through the law, or?
That's gonna keep us here until into the zoning board meeting and then pass.
All right, so, yeah, that's right, we do have zoning board meeting tonight. So, well, then we can go right into comments for the council can take into consideration as we move the process forward. So I know you have some.
First, I have concerns with the law. One of my biggest concerns is, we can say all town residents, but the residents that are most impacted are the residents that live near this in the farming district. Those are the residents that have come to us more than once through the years to say, why won't you help pay for us to have high-speed internet? Our kids can't always do their homework online because of the connectivity. People can't work from home. It holds back the people in the ag district. When I think about what's happened in the last couple of months, people aren't coming out to get the Chronicle at the grocery stores maybe like they used to, and maybe they don't know they can get it online. There's a lot of focus on COVID. There's a lot of focus on the riots and that. How many people in the farm district will be the most affected for this are really aware of what's happening? Are they even able to watch us here? So to say we're going to move forward and have a public hearing that the people most affected by within that district may not be able to contribute to from their homes, that we really need to be able to have them here. That I know it slows things down, but they came out in pretty good force to work with us on the farmland protection plan. A lot of the work was done in 2013. We sent out 108 letters. They invited residents to participate in a survey. back then, solar really wasn't on the table back then. Nobody was considering solar generation facilities in the farmland or anywhere. They did come up with suggestions on things that they felt could help in the farmland, but a 20% turnout or a 20% response on surveys was something we were told was a great response. That's not a low response, even though 20% doesn't seem like all we wanted. So I think those people that cared about the farmland, that came out, that responded to surveys, sometimes there were a lot of people here for those meetings, that it's only fair to them too. We're listening to the people that want the solar. We want to make sure the voice of the people that haven't had a chance to speak out is easily conveyed. And I'm thinking this is not going to work for a lot of them. We talk about how we lose connectivity in some of the meetings, and we talk about how that we get cut off early. How do we say, you have to be able to watch this and speak to us via this setup? And I don't think it doesn't work for me to be able to say we're having a public hearing until we can have them here.
Yeah, we're gonna go around and give everybody an opportunity, but from a administrative standpoint, I just want to make it clear, and it's I didn't bring it up, I meant to in my opening remarks. I have no intention of moving this process forward without the public having the ability to be here in person. This is the most significant land use change probably in the history of the town of Moreau, at least as far as the ag district is concerned. And I think it's important that people have the ability to be here, make their comments known directly to the town board, face to face. There's no technology limitations. You do bring a good point. I have very slow internet at my house. I do not have cable in front of my house. Some parts of the ag district don't. This law will have the greatest impact in the ag district. So I think it behooves all of us to make sure when we get to that stage in the process that we make sure the public is here, has the ability to be here in person. And hopefully it's not too far around the corner. But I'm sorry, were you?
No, I know, I was pleased today. I kept thinking about that. In fact, how can we say we're having a public hearing when these people maybe can't even participate? Or some of them can't participate. So I was pleased today when I came in and said to you, hey, this is how I feel about that. You had said, oh yeah, I know. You were also about the same.
Council member.
Well, I'm sorry, what about the actual law? Do you have any
Yeah, I
information?
solar facilities. I'm
So you disagree with solar?
Yes, the
Okay.
solar generation facilities and the electrical generation plants with the solar in the farm district is not something that I agree with. I am fine, I understand the cost of electricity and the cost of melting machines or whatever is happening to heat barns, to heat homes, that I'm not against helping those people with the cost of solar. But to use valuable farmland and to impose on neighbors' perception of their land being something that they can look out and see across the fields, nobody wants to look out and see solar panels.
So out of farmland whatsoever?
Out.
Could I just ask, does that include use on-farm consumption as part of the business, or you
No,
want
you
that out
own a
too?
farm and you want us to generate enough electricity so that you can help with your farm electric bill, your personal electric bill, and you have solar panels on the roof of your barns, on the roof of your home.
So on-farm consumption, you would be okay?
I would be okay, but
Roof mounted or ground mounted?
I guess it would depend. I need a discussion on how much ground mounted we need. There's 3 homes on Unilee Fort Edward, and 2 of the neighbors, there's 2 of them that have those ground mounted facilities. I think about this poor neighbor next door. How's he going to sell his house? Who wants to buy a house and look out the door and there's 2, they're large, significant solar panels behind the homes. And yeah, they're behind the homes, but somebody's looking out of their house, looking at those panels.
Kind of like the ones that are right up here by the town hall.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis.
So just real quick, I have a few comments as well. I'm curious to know, when you made, Ms. LeClaire, you made a comment about the Farmland Protection Plan of 2014, and solar wasn't a major concern at the time because it didn't seem to be popping up. What was the major concern at that time was it housing tracts or was it what to protect it?
There was discussions about ways that if farmers were looking to be able to make, not make money, but be able to help support their farming operations in ways other than crops or animals, there is a restriction in the farming district that you have to have 5 acres, and tell me if I'm wrong, but it's 5 acres to build a home. So it's never been easy for them to say, okay, I'm gonna sell a little of my land off. They talked about things that happened in other communities, such as, say this table is your farmland. And this is all good farmland, and this is the woods over here in the corner. Typically, if you were going to put homes on that, you'd need 5 acres, so you need a big block, that might be cutting into the farmland. But in some areas, they've changed zoning, and I don't know the words, what they called it, but instead of saying you've got to put 10 homes on 5 acres each to be able to put 10 homes in, they might say, you can put,
Cluster development.
yes, that's it.
Land use development.
Cluster
It's
development.
clustering, so the homes are not in a way that would interfere with the farming, and they're not in the middle of the farm field, they're placed in a position that might not be used as much for farming, and it wasn't something that we made into a law that we could do, but they came up with ideas like that, that seemed like a way that the people seemed to think that that was a good thing, being able to do ag tourism.
Sure.
Towards, you know, they say, oh, come and stay on the farm for a week and learn to milk a cow and learn to, things such as that, that
I'm only asking
that we
this because,
maintain.
yeah, and I appreciate that. I'm only asking because, again, like Supervisor said, this is gonna be one of the largest, land use changes or laws that we'll deal with in the town of Moreau. And I just was curious to know, because since, solar has kind of shown its presence here and a desire for it, I was wondering if, you know, obviously if we were writing that farmland protection plan now, maybe that would be in there as well, but.
It might be, but we don't know because we haven't asked them.
Right, so that was I was just curious about that, but I had some comments as well about this. You all saw my comments on the residential side of things. I don't know if we need to reread them at this point with Mr. Martin's responses.
Well, I mean, it's up to you. This is the first time that, I mean, you've all read it, might as well do it. It's up to you, however you want to do it.
And at some point, I guess I'm looking for public, you know, to hear it, or is it something that we just put up?
Yeah, this isn't something I would put up. This is like the memo I put together, that's an internal.
Yeah, I would go over your concerns with the draft, and if you had questions that still need to be answered for you.
I mean, I don't have questions on what Jim responded.
Or recommendation.
So I would say I had my initial concerns seem to be about the oversight on the small ground mounted PV systems, which obviously are different than the large. And I was curious as for the reason for no site plan review on the small systems. Mr. Martin's response, essentially it said, you know, being smaller in scale, the thought was that smaller systems, as long as they meet the requirements, should be subject to a permit, administrative or for compliance, and if deemed to be compliant with applicable regulations, a permit can be issued. Being of a small scale, the expectation that an adverse impact could result from a system that meets all requirements was thought to be unlikely. That said, the draft law can certainly be revised to require that all systems are subject to a site plan review. You know, I think that's, regardless if it's small scale or large scale, I think it's the land use. And again, the biggest issue that I think comes up with this is, can people see it and do they want to look at it? And I think the answer is nobody wants to look at it, nobody wants to see it. So I would really push for these smaller scale also being part of a site plan review. I don't know if the planning board goes out and looks at sites, and I think it makes a world of difference to see a site where something would go.
I think the board members individually go look, they don't go as a group in advance.
No, I don't think they can do that. I think they have to go. No, they can't. I just think it's so important, and then this does relay over to the large scale use of the land as well, because if you see you know, someone has multi-hundreds of acres, I don't know, you know, what some of the larger land owners have here, it is quite possible, I would think, to essentially tuck away a large scale operation, to keep it out of sight from the public. So, you know, I think both of them require some site plan review. It's already kind of in the large scale, but I think we should look for that on the smaller side as well. Again, a lot of my comments were about some of the smaller scales, and then I had one concern, I think, again, that worth mentioning, that while it's still labeled for C, you know, while it's still in, I think, C1, C2, and C3, those abut directly up behind neighborhoods with high density, and if you were to follow the law, it would put them right in essentially someone's backyard. If they're sitting in their backyard, they could look out and see these 15-foot solar area PV systems that I don't necessarily think that was, I think the whole point was to keep them out of those areas, so I think that was just the thought that, oh, it's commercial, but maybe there was just some oversight that the commercial butts up against some of these high-density residential neighborhoods, so something for us to look into, and he addressed that as well. But that's the ground mounted. I think roof mounted are a different story. I don't think they look great either, but that's a little bit different. I mean, you know, if someone wants to put them on a house, I'm not opposed to that. For the large scale, solar PV systems, some that would be considered the commercial grade. You know, what the moratorium has done is allowed me more time to think about it, drive the roads, drive the farm areas, look at views, and, you know, what's interesting is that I think I will certainly say, I love riding around our ag district and our spots where we have these beautiful views, particularly if you continue down this road right here, where Town Hall is, you head out towards, you cross Route 32 and you head out and look and you see all those, the mountains in the distance. It's beautiful, and I wouldn't want to see the solar array. But I believe if you have enough, I do believe if you have enough land and property, that you should be allowed to put solar in a way that with, you know, site plan review, make sure, you know, follow the setbacks that we create. You work within whatever the law is with the planning board and zoning, you should be able to do that. Now, the percentage of land, as I guess where I have some question as to what should be allowed. Now, I think one of our neighboring communities, which is also essentially almost 100% is Northumberland, like 100% ag district at this point.
I live in Northumberland and I'm not in an ag district. Okay,
so I don't know what the percentage of land in Northumberland is, but I believe they might be up around 25% on their law. And, you know, I am not opposed to, you know, I know we have 10 in here. I'm not opposed to 25 to 30% if in fact it can fit all the requirements, be out of sight, and, you know, whomever owns that land follows this law. One of the things I feel about our farmers is that they are still the best stewards for our lands. And if in fact, some of these farms have the ability to take some of the revenue generated from these power plants and turn it back into their farm, that will continue to allow for future farming. I don't want to see houses. I don't want to see 50 houses go on 100 acres or whatever the math is, 5 acres. But I don't want to see 50 houses go on 500 acres. So I'd rather a farm carry on in the future if they have revenue that they can generate on their property. So, you know, and I know we've got a few projects in front of us that, and I think there are some I don't want to say misinformation, because I don't know if we've ever really all asked or figured it out. Capacity on the grid is different than piping into one of those transmission lines. So we can talk about capacity on the grid all we want, but that's not really affecting, I think, some of these larger projects that are in our ag district or maybe even down in R3. So then, and I brought that up because at one point, I think I was hung up on the fact that, I know that we would love to do some solar here on some of our town properties, and I would support that. Obviously, I know we've discussed the landfill at one point in time. We discussed more down in the industrial park, and that I am of course supportive of as well. But when it comes to the ag district R5, it really has to be, they're all unique properties down there. It has to be looked at from a spot where I think it can be out of sight and not be seen. And if it's out of sight and not being seen, I have a tough time thinking that I would be opposed to it. I've done that drive from, I've said this to somebody, from Las Vegas to LA before, and as you cross over the California border and you look left and you look right, all you can see, for as far as you can see, are solar panels. And that is absolutely not what I think our ag district should turn into. And my concern is, okay, if we go through and we allow 25 to 30 or whatever percent, is there a way to actually control that so that it doesn't turn into that particular scene? Is that where the planning board can come in and say, you're asking for too much? Now can a planning board do that? Can a planning board come in and say, you asked for 25%, but it's completely in view of all these people, this road, and we're not going to grant that? Can that happen?
They can't grant it solely for that. They can't deny it solely for that reason. I mean, what a lot of what you're talking about is the visual aesthetic purposes.
Right.
That is a seeker determination, so they couldn't look at it under seeker, but they can't deny an application. If it meets all the rest of the requirements in there, just because it doesn't look good,
Right.
they can't deny it for that reason. Because if that was an ability, there would be no projects anywhere, because there's always one person that doesn't like the way something looks.
True.
So.
Okay. So, and thank you for that. So I guess that is how I feel about the law draft as it's currently presented to us now. Again, I would support increasing the amount of gross area of each lot, ultimately.
In the R5 district.
In the R5 district,
From
yes.
10 up. Now, and I know all of you have read it, so you understand that, to your point, farms within the ag district that are using these large amounts for their farm stuff,
Yeah.
they're exempt from all this.
Right. And so that's what I find a bit interesting about this too, that if you're going to use it for your own, and it's viewable and everything else, and I don't know, I still don't know if I'd even be okay with that. If we're going to allow it for use for your own versus large scale to sell back to make some revenue, and it's actually a lot of revenue. It's not a little bit of revenue, it's a lot of revenue. In the few areas where it can fit, because I don't believe it can fit through the whole system here, through the whole 5R5 area. I think the screening part or being able to not be seen from the road or from a residence or whatever it might be, still needs to be part of the process. So that's how I feel about that.
Thank you, Councilmember Moreau.
Thank you. I have some similar thoughts as far as like aesthetics, etc. I'm going to refer to this particular section. It's on page 6 of 9, section A, and it talks large-scale solar PV systems are permitted as primary principle through site plan review approval, but from the planning board with the agriculture. What I have the problem with is the highlighted area where large-scale solar systems are not permitted to be constructed on prime farmland of statewide importance, farmland of local importance, or while unique soils as defined by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers or local governing body.
That's highlighted in your section? It's not highlighted in mine.
I'm sorry,
Must have come across.
nobody highlighted it for me.
Well, no, it very well may have been, because as I was combining laws, I like to know if I knew what was going on, and it just might have,
Okay, so what that tells me is that it's not permitted at all within the agricultural area? Any large scale system?
No, those are specific, so prime farmland, if you back up, John, to definitions, it defines prime farmland, and that's actually a USDA classification. It's not every acre of farmland. I don't know how many acres off the top of my head. I think it's in your farmland protection plan, how many acres it is. That's up.
Well, so when I look at a map of R5, and I think about, I did actually was going through the agricultural protection plan. It looks like a lot of the area that might be between Route 32 and the river would be pretty much those classifications of prime farmland or farmland of farmland of statewide importance, et cetera.
Okay.
And thinking about what people have presented to me for ideas, that would be an area that this might actually, I think, might actually fit. So I'm not keen on that there. Thinking about how much power can actually go into the grid, and thinking about how much power can actually go into the grid and how big of a system could actually be built in the town of Moreau. I don't know if that's subject to change, but different presenters have come to us in the last couple of years and talked about a number that might be like 27 megawatts is all that could go in. And the one thing that we changed again tonight has Nexamp at the Moreau Industrial Park. We talked about a system going in with the 3.5 megawatts there. Is that?
Around 4 is what I think I heard him say.
Okay, so that will bring, with that understanding, that brings that total down to 23 megawatts.
That's with the existing capacity lines, if there's upgrades, like.
Yeah, we don't know
know.
that. It's kind of like, like a water line. There's only so much that can go through the line because of the size of it. And how many people are actually drawing off of it. Now, is it possible things are going to change in the future? Sure there are. You kind of got to look at it as, it's going to, the farmland protection plan was written in 2012, and we're now 8 years later, and in my mind, I'm thinking things have changed. The structure of farms have changed. The whole agricultural business is changing. I don't want to see it excluded from some of these names down here, and I think that this does do that. I think that it does exclude it from that. The percentage, I'll go to page 8 or 9 percentages. Section C, 3B, 10% of the gross area of each lot. At one point I was going, I know that I thought that, I'm thinking that I might not want that in there.
Went like more or less, or?
No, I'm thinking more. I'm thinking, but I'm thinking about land and in particular was been brought to me for thought of what they want to do, and 10% wouldn't do it for them. And I'm not really sure, so then going down in here, the number 6, installation on farm shall abide by rules, standards, and regulations established by NISDAM, New York State, what's that? DAM?
Department of Agriculture and Markets.
Department of Agriculture, the construction and installation of should be designed to minimize any adverse impacts on the productivity of the soil and farm operation. So, thinking about that, and I don't know what those rules and regulations are. I guess I'd have to know more about them. But when I think about solar, I think about it being a long-term temporary structure with these large solar arrays. What I'm learning about is that, yes, you can own it yourself, there's a longevity on it. If you lease the land, there's an end to the contract, and the idea is to decommission it. So these things will be pulled out, and the soils reverted back to where they were at the start of the process. That's one of the reasons why, and one of the big reasons why I would not oppose it to be in agriculture, because even though it's a long-term use, it's not a permanent use versus, okay, I can't afford this farm anymore, I'm gonna start selling it off as building lots. And I'd rather not see that. I did have, on page 9 of 9, I had question number 8 in the last sentence, 2 sentences here. The buried cable on cropland shall be a minimum depth of 48 inches. At no time is the depth of cover to be less than 24 inches below soil surface. Isn't, I'm thinking that it's like, shouldn't that be like 48, and
I think
how could it be less than that?
I think depth of cover is a term of art. I don't know off the top of my head, John. I know that Jim Martin actually is sitting here in the back and talking about your law.
My law?
Yeah.
You mean my draft?
Have you ever heard that, the depth of cover with respect to buried electrical cables? The law right now says buried electrical cables have to be 48 inches.
Well, I think why that's being done in this case is in the event that these cables are transmission lines, so that it may have to cross crop areas, and those areas have to be tilled or disturbed, that they don't run into the cable.
Right, I think John's question though is that it may just be.
It says that she'll have a minimum depth of 48 inches, but then it goes on to say, at no time that the depth of cover will be less than 24.
Oh, okay, that would, yeah, I can see the point there. They should at least be consistent.
So is that a 48 or 24?
Yeah.
However you guys want to do it.
Well, I'm thinking that, I'm just thinking that if it's gonna be 48, you keep it at 48 or lower. Okay? That was my thought for that. And then 9D, farms that are within the agricultural district are generally exempt from large-scale solar energy system regulations, provided that the solar equipment is considered on farm equipment. What does that mean?
You're in D,
9D, on page 9 of 9.
providing the solar equipment is considered on farm equipment. Farms that are in that code to be on farm, do you want?
This is, I'm assuming that this is for a farm that's utilizing the energy for themselves,
And they're making 110% of their energy.
110% of their energy, but if they farm equipment, is that like on their barns? Or is that,
I can look to see if that was, if there's a word missing, if there is.
okay,
It appears that the general.
there appears to be modifications made to this somehow after I was, my draft is only 8 pages.
Right, and I had said, these are other things that we had put in, and I sent it to you, I thought.
Okay.
So let me look at that, John, and see, maybe a further answer.
Okay?
You're just proving that you read every word.
Well, I don't know about that, but I'm looking at it, and there's a couple of things that just stuck out to me. And, you know, I mean, when I look at the small scales and roof mounted, I'm less concerned. I'm thinking that, you know, there are areas that I wouldn't want a standalone system in a residential area. You know, as Kyle pointed out, somebody's backyard where you're looking out, where they might have a pool, now they have a solar array. But there are some that are okay because of the location of it. I'm good with that. But I think that it has to do with somebody going out and actually looking at the area that somebody's proposing to put something and have a determination made by planning board. I don't know. I think at this point, that's.
Well, in deference to that first comment, bear in mind that, you know, right at the outset about the seeing these in other people's backyards, bear in mind, small scale ground mounted solar is not allowed in the R1 or R2, in the higher density districts.
Okay.
You know, R3 and R4 and R5 are contemplating, these are bigger yards, bigger lots. So you're not gonna have them right on top of one another, in theory.
Yep.
Okay, so.
Thanks. Okay. That's it for now, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Patrick.
All right. All right, I've got a few concerns here, but, you know, kind of touched on a couple of them, touched on. I believe most people, most residents of the town are pro solar, ones that I've spoken to. Big concerns are the locations in the sight lines. Especially in residential areas, I was talking about that. I think maybe we should look at lot size, because that's been mentioned here a couple of times. You know, there probably are lot sizes that could fit in solar panels, ground mounted, that wouldn't be unlikely, that would conform in that change the character of the neighborhood. But there's some lots are just too small, and I understand people's concerns.
Are you talking in general or large scale? Because there are lot size requirements already in for large scale.
But I'm talking small scale.
Okay.
You know, in residential areas, because that was people's biggest concern. Is they don't mind solar, but you know, having placed properly where they're not having to sit on their deck and look across and see their neighbors.
Well, then I just got one question. I think that's an interesting concept, because right now, with small scale ground mounted regulation that is being attempted here is attempted to regulate that by the district in which it's located. Now, it could very easily read to say, in the district in which it's located, providing there's a minimum lot size present. So, for example, you know, there's a lot of substandard lots in R3 that are maybe a half acre in size. They're just pre-existing non-conforming dating back to whenever. So what could be done part and parcel there is we could put in a minimum lot size as well. And I would just, you know, seek to have some guidance as to what you think might be appropriate for that. So, you know, it could be an R3, but the minimum lot size must be 1 acre, 2 acre, 3 acre, you know, whatever, in addition to being in that district. Right. That's a very good thought, you know, about linking it to lot, and that can easily be done, and it's something that can easily be tracked and enforced.
I don't know, question added. Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry.
I didn't mean to interrupt, John, but I don't want to say that. I think that's a worthwhile thing to maybe contemplate, is a minimum lot size in addition to just using the district as a
And
location.
you have a lot coverage thing in here though. You're limited to only 1,000 square feet or 20% of the lot size, whichever is left.
Right.
So there's some protection in there already.
No, that was kind of what he's doing.
And I had some concern of John's with the prohibiting of the large scale in the ag district is, where they're prohibited prime farmland, so to state right importance. And I look at it and I got the numbers, actually I got the numbers from Moreau Farmland Protection Plan. And by the time we get done with all the acreage that isn't allowed, in acreage that isn't buildable, which is over 3,600 acres because of ravines, wetlands, and creeks, you come up with a very, very low percentage, if any, land available to put these large scale ground mounted solar on. I don't know why we put such heavy restrictions on it. I'm a firm believer that if someone owns a property, a piece of land, they should be able to do within reason what they want to do on the property. As long as it doesn't, and this is why we have zoning laws, infringe on another person's property or the general lay of the land. And I think here what we're doing is putting restrictions on a large scale. I believe in talking to people, like I said, about keeping the sight lines and putting them in proper areas, as we Kyle touched on it. I believe there's areas out in the ag district that are big enough to put in these large solar arrays, with keeping in mind, keeping the agricultural, I want to say feel of the area, keeping the soil preserved, being able to continue to farm on the property, maybe to help them to stay sustainable by putting these rates on there and keeping farmland. And that's one of our prime objectives, I'm sure, is to keep our farmlands farmland. Someone mentioned, I think it was John, and I think Kyle too, that if we're not able to help these farmers stay farming, we're going to be looking at permanent things out there. John said these arrays are temporary. We'll be looking at permanent things that are taking away from the farm land out there. We're going to look at developments, housing developments. I don't want that area to start looking like Clifton Park. You know, that's what happened out there. They just went out in their outlying districts and just loaded them up with houses. And so I think we should do everything possible to help the farmers continue to farm their land. Put these things in where they can conform in I don't want to say look nice, but in blend in. We don't see them where the sight lines are down to where we're not seeing them all over the place. I don't think anybody wants to see just arrays of solar panels all over the agricultural land here in town. But I think if they're properly sited, I don't see any reason why we can't have some out there. And I believe right now the way the laws are, is way too restrictive, way too restrictive.
So you're indicating, so that one, well, you and John talked about that one discussion of the prime farmland. That's the real issue with the language.
Because if you look at it, and you look at the numbers, and like I said, I got these numbers out of the farmland protection plan.
Right, I'm just wondering if, like, the rest of it you're okay with?
The rest of the.
Because there's a lot that they have to, that developers and installers have to meet.
Right.
I'm just trying to make sure I'm taking the first notes earlier.
But I think we got to remove some of these restrictions. I mean.
Besides that one, what are the restrictions you're thinking? I don't need to put you on the spot.
Okay, good.
Well, I don't really get a chance to put you guys on the spot very often.
Okay. Well, the percentage of property.
Okay.
You know, I think it's the small residents. Pretty good percentage.
The small are 1,000 square feet or 20%, whichever is less. The large scale is in the industrial it's 60%, and in the R5 it's 10%. But there's been discussion of increasing that.
Well, that's what yeah, absolutely. I think that percentage would have to go up. You know, I would like to be the majority of the property just left on the way it is. But I'd be willing to say 35, 40%. You know, if they can fit into the conform to to be properly sighted, I would say, and keep our sight lines in mind, because that is one of the biggest things, biggest concerns of people I've talked to, is the sight things. But I believe some of these properties out there are big enough that they should be able to be able to put them in there and still have our agricultural land.
Okay.
Look like we'd like it to look. That's all I got, thanks.
Thank you. We do have a zoning board meeting at 7 o'clock, so we do have a little bit more time. Appreciate everybody's comments. There's been multiple comments from several board members about increasing the percentage numbers. And just as a point of reference, we have in the draft as a starting point the 10% figure in there. Now, I can tell you that there's a proposal out there on a 500-acre farm. 10% of 500 acres is 50 acres. That is half of our rec park covered in solar. So I think one of the things that we should also consider if people are looking to increase percentages, I think it should be capped at a minimum or a maximum acreage on a parcel. I think that's something we should seriously look at. But I don't know, we'll go around the horn, still have more time if you want. If you're done for this evening. I'm sorry. I didn't mean.
Well, actually, I have two then. We talk about limiting it and we talk about farmers. Right now, we have one farmer that's choosing to do it, and tell me if I'm wrong, the grid has set amounts that they are required to take as a buyback. And after that, they don't need to take more electricity. So as we move forward, once we hit the cap with the amount that the grid has to take from solar panels installed by farmers or individuals or wherever they're taking it from, they no longer have to take it. So we can say we're thinking about all the farmers, but it really comes down to if this farmer puts this solar facility on the farms, then it pretty much effectively locks down anybody else's ability to have additional solar generation facilities anyways, correct?
To a certain degree,
That's correct.
there's no matter, any entity could put up to 110% of their usage on the property. That does not, that number, that 27 megawatts isn't affected by that 110%.
But if you use for personal use, if you're doing sell back to the grid, like this generation facility would do on this farm lot, that what goes on our I want to say, I got the word wrong, but you know what goes over there at the transfer station, what goes on at the industrial park, that all feeds the electricity back into the grid. And there is just so much electricity that the grid is required to take. And once that's met, you and I, Todd, or anybody else in here, won't matter. We could put personal use solar that had a little bit of excess that went into the grid, but we could never put another solar generation facility in the farm district. So when we're talking about farmers having a right and thinking we're allowing multiple farmers, this farm that wants to put 100 acres of solar panels down, and the few little projects like the one at the transfer station to help the taxpayers with the costs, and the one on the steep ravine in the industrial park, we pretty much eat up anyone else's ability to do something such as this, that will only be allowed at that point, not to sell back and benefit them with their farm costs, but only to be able to have it there to cover their personal farm costs, but not to make money like what's happening in this position. And I'm not against this farmer, but we say farmers, but it might not only help this one farmer, Jake. It's not.
Okay, then your thinking is that we wouldn't allow this to happen just in case somewhere down the line, somebody might happen to want to come in and join the club. See, that's a crazy way to look at things. First, I don't see it. If we don't approve something because somewhere down the line, somebody might, or might not, want to do the same thing. I don't understand that.
That's not my thought on not approving it, that has nothing to do with me not approving, but I think you're exact. You say farmers, farmers, farmers. There aren't gonna be a lot of other farmers from what I understand as far as the capacity allowed to be sold back to the grid. There isn't a lot of capacity allowed after this happens, so it's not farmers, it's not somebody's neighbor or anyone else that's going to be able to do this. So we're not helping the farm district as a whole, we're helping one entity in the farm district. And I'm okay with that, if you're for it, I'm okay with that, that's not why I'm against it. But there are restrictions, it's not, you're not allowing every farm.
The thing is that everybody wants to keep the ag district intact. We want to see nice, beautiful ag district. Everybody does, and so do I. And that's why I want to help as many farmers, whoever needs it, every farmer in here to try to help them save their farm, keep their farmland. And not see, like John said, a bunch of houses and stuff out there. Because that's what we're headed toward. That's what we're headed toward. Because farming is changed, as you well know. Farming isn't what farming used to be.
I know.
You know, it's tough to maintain farms out there today.
Let's get back on the draft, because that's what we're talking about. I do want Councilmember Noonan,
I think maybe just to clarify, Mr. Claire, like say we want to put solar on the landfill and say we're going to be possibly signing a contract with someone down at the industrial park. That is unrelated in terms of capacity to say what one of the proposals is right now in town. The one in town that's looking for 100 acres is going directly up into a transmission line,
Right.
not through a grid requiring capacity. So like what capacity is left on the grid does entail, like say something might happen at the landfill and the industrial park. But if this particular one, why this is a sweet spot essentially for this project is this high power transmission line essentially goes right over the property and it can go right up into it. It's a lot different than going through the grid down, whether it's on Farnham Road or wherever. So they are unrelated. I don't believe they are. One is not, doesn't restrict the other.
Okay, I think I understand, but I'll talk to you later.
Sure. But another question about this though, does the town have the ability to, now this is the part where I'm thinking this is probably illegal, I don't know, reserve capacity, say we want to put something on the dump, or the landfill, excuse me, and we know it's going to be a 7 or 8 megawatt system. But getting back to the grid, not talking about ag district at this point, getting back to what's available for capacity. Can we reserve it for a certain period of time, and if we can't get it done, then we do give it up to other entities that are trying to do something in town. I know, because I know we've talked about it for our own use at one point for our own capacity, but again, unrelated to a large scale project.
It is a large scale project.
Well, that would be a large scale project, but with a capacity of 7 or 8 megawatts.
3.4 is what was covered.
For the landfill? Okay. So.
Kyle, to your question, I'm not sure if we can have like a reserve capacity like we talked about an hour ago in water. I don't know if we can do that, but I'm on the NextEra website right now.
I mean, I only bring it up because I know we would like to also utilize the lands that we have here in town to put that on where, again, it's not visible and it's a benefit, whether it's community solar or whatever it might be. And I would like that opportunity to do that for our town as well, and not necessarily give it all away if we in fact have property where we can do it on. Thanks.
thank you. Zoning Administrator Jim Martin.
Yeah, I just had a clarification on Gina's comment, because what I heard you saying was that there is a potential that National Grid as a utility is only required to buy so much alternative energy power. And once they reach that limit, there could be a bunch of other alternative providers out there. Grid's not going to take it because they don't have to. That's what I heard you say.
That's what I thought this fell underneath that.
I don't know the answer to that question, and that's something to consider, because I could see that being the case, but I just don't know it as a fact, or if there's a regulation about that or not. But if grid did reach that threshold, then they're simply not gonna take any more alternative energy power because their minimum requirements met. And that's a question. I don't know what the answer, we have to find out what that is. If there is such a threshold.
Thought in one of the presentations, they brought that up.
Even if you're under the big power transmission line or not, they're not gonna take your power because they don't have to. Because they'd rather go.
Look into
We can
that.
get answers for you.
I'll have to find out. That's an interesting question. I can see that being the case, and I can see where it might not. I just don't know.
I think that's where the 27 megawatt number came into play, is that that's what they would allow it to the grid based upon what capacity they have. And that was presented prior presentation.
And so like Gina's point saying, this is gonna be the be all and end all for all the farmers in the community. If one project comes through and provides a huge amount of power, then the people behind him or her, you're out of luck because they met the threshold for their project.
Right, and there's, my understanding was a presenter who was looking to do solar on the golf course area.
Still is.
And still is, and I personally, I don't want to see it over there. I think that there's a better use for that property. I don't want to drive down 197 and be looking at solar panels. Any more than I like to go to other towns and drive through and see them right there on the main roads. I'm okay with solar, I kind of like solar, but I think that they can be better hidden, so to speak, so that it's not what you see when you drive through an area.
Councilmember.
To that point, I mean, if you wanna, maybe you've all seen it before, but if you go up Ridge Road in Queensbury and towards Lake George, you come around that corner by the old landfill and you see the fire department right there and you go, oh, look at the mountain, oh, look at those solar fields. Because you see the mountain and it's a big, huge solar array right there. And you know what, that definitely makes you go, oh, God, these things are clean and they're green and they're wonderful, but oh my God, really are taking back from the environment. So, you know, I have that point. My other question here was, geez, now I just lost I lost it as I got excited when I heard what he had said there. I should have brought the note down. I guess I'm gonna have to pass. If it comes back, I'll save it for next time, or
Shoot me an email.
I'll shoot you an email. Yeah, because I thought it was a good point to bring up. It was a question, so that I don't know the answer to. So I will send you that question. Sorry, thank you.
And I'll contact Jen over at NextEra to follow these questions and try and get answers for you. Thank you.
The only other component wasn't discussed here tonight, but it's something we certainly have to take into consideration is the real property tax impact that these facilities are going to have. We will not be able to receive taxes on these capital improvements on the property, just so you know.
I thought within the state law that allowed for an assessment.
So there is by transmission region or utility region, they come up with an adopted amount
Yep.
per kilowatt.
Yep.
And school district gets a bite of that, the town and the county get a bite of that, correct?
Right.
Won't be much left over on the town side.
Okay.
And it's not a lot. I think I saw numbers in Saratoga County in the National Grid Service area at one point during our conversations of about total, this is for total fee paid, around 4,000. We know the percentage of what your taxes go to the school district, so the same percentage would come out of that figure. So it's not a boom for a real property tax standpoint for a municipality. But you know, just for point of reference.
I remember.
Okay, back on track.
It's written right in front of me. I didn't even look down.
Councilmember.
Sorry. New York State. Will New York State come through and say, great law, we're going to supersede your law and let people do what they want to do? Good job. Way to spend the money, way to spend the time. Try and do what you want to do, but we're going to come and do what we want. where do we stand with that?
Kind of.
Okay.
In the budget this year, they did enact the new siting law. Large scale.
Yeah,
Large
right.
scale.
Big ones.
And ultimately, nothing is in law yet. So nothing actually is in effect yet, I think, until next year.
Okay.
It's been adopted, it won't be enacted because they have to draft up the regulations. Basically, it's saying any of these huge, large-scale projects will go through what's known as an Article 10 process, basically. It'll be a different process for
Power
the
plant
state.
siting.
I'm sorry.
Article 10 is power plant siting.
Right, but that's, yeah, it's Article 10. What they'll do is they'll say, okay, we're gonna come over and yes, town, that's great, you have good laws. We like ours better, and we're gonna go through ours. Doesn't mean that, I mean, you have the right, and they're gonna put regulations in place that you can kind of, the town, municipalities can appeal that. And there's a lot of concern, the Association of Towns, I know, and ICOM, a lot of places are really upset that, because it's taking home rule away from the towns. That being said, when last I spoke to NYSERDA, they're still trying to wrap their head around what the regulations are gonna be. They have a year to put these together. There will be lots of public comment on these. I'm keeping up with it. Once they're in the state register, there's a 60-day period that we all have the right to look at and public hearings for the regulations. So I think that that's gonna be a time that towns are gonna want to start.
I'm sure they were delayed with COVID.
Yeah, I mean, it is big for the governor's programs, the clean energy by a certain year, but.
Right.
So what I would do is not take that and say, well, why are we putting all this time and effort into this if we're just gonna be superseded by the state? I would really urge you not to do that and keep
Right.
moving forward
Okay.
because, you never know what's gonna happen.
Right, and the other thing I just add to that, the same principle is gonna hold true for 5G when it comes. And it's already been, the die's already cast. They've already severely limited the local community or local municipality's role in that review procedure, both in terms of time and if the poles are placed on, the antennas are placed on your right of way, the amount of money that can be derived from that placement.
But that's for another time.
Sure. 5G is gonna be,
Yeah.
it sounds like a great technological wonder, but you talk about visual impact, there's gonna be substantial visual impact from 5G when it really gets laid out.
Any other comments on the draft legislation for this evening?
No.
Kyle?
No, thank you.
Gina?
One pass, I promise. 1 acre, I don't think it's too broad. You could have an acre that's 75 feet wide and goes back, and I could have a pretty square acre, so just put an acreage amount on it. I don't know if that works.
Well, you know that it's not just, that's not the only requirement. It has to be situated, for example, the small one in the rear. It has to meet side setbacks. So there is gonna be a footprint that it can fit on that one acre.
Well, we can put lot width in there if you would like.
I don't know, I just thought.
We can add a lot width provision. If you would like. It might be appropriate to do that because I understand your point. I see them all the time. There's lots that are essentially 7,500 feet wide, but they can go back 500 or 600 feet, essentially bowling alleys. And, the placement on that would be tricky and there's a high potential for visual impact.
Okay, so I know that council has a lot of information.
Thank you very much. It's helpful.
And I would encourage board members as we go through the process to provide feedback as the information comes back from council. So we'll keep the process moving. So with that, we're going to end the discussion this evening on the draft solar law. We do have a couple more items on the agenda, which I'll be brief since we've got another meeting in here this evening. Item 12 is supervisor items, just a few things. I received a letter from Hudson, actually an email with an attached letter from Dr. Slingerland with Hudson Headwaters Health Network, indicating that in relation to the task force on health equity, The bottom line is to provide the best possible care for all patients now and into the future. He is pleased to announce the creation of the Hudson Headwaters Cares Program, which stands for Culturally Appropriate and Responsive Education and Services. The Task Force for Health Equity and staff from various departments and community members invited by him will review their messaging and approach to care and employment as they move forward. So I'll make you aware of that correspondence. I was interviewed again by the Albany Business Review. I think the board members got a copy of the article. Headline is investors bought 81 acres at this Northway exit, which is exit 17. Those watching think it's just the beginning. Moreau got a lot of good coverage in there. I can tell you that the Business Review tracks the number of hits when they do stories on Moreau, and they're huge whenever exit 17 comes up in their articles, so that's good news. Just a reminder, I brought up the last board meeting, New York State Canal Corporation secret scoping document in relation to the Earth and Embankment Integrity Program. The public still has until July 3rd, 2020 to comment. I do have more information in my office. We had staff that has been working on the old, or the previous sheriff's substation. As you know, the town historian has requested office space, and the town's, I think, required to provide space for historian use. And I believe after today, they're all set for that to be utilized, at least parts of it, for town historian. And that's all I have for supervisor items. Committee reports, I know that Councilmember Leclerc has just a brief update on the newsletter. She's done a lot of footwork on that. We're getting closer, but we're not quite there yet.
Jeffrey has helped me quite a bit, thank you very much, and I am waiting, or on hold until the lady that can quote prices comes back to work at Allen's Made Easy. She left this midweek last week. I didn't hear back from her call Monday, and they said she's gone for another week. So as soon as she's back, I pretty much have the pricing set, and I'll at least email it to you. I hope we can make a decision at the next meeting. You know, we approved over 4,000 back in 2019 at the end of the year, but there's some choices to be made. If you want to color that, you know, you know.
We're gonna get the final numbers to us, and I will take it up at
They tell me she'll be back at the beginning of next week, so I won't have anything for that.
Any other?
Yeah, so let's start with transfer station. So our transfer station, we've been talking about brush and the debris that's been floating down here. We're contemplating charging for larger vehicles, keeping it so that the town residents, we have pickup truck and or small utility trailer to be dropped off for free, but if it's a state body, we would be charging dump trucks. I think we're talking about a fee. I don't want a little more time to be able to rewrite this as far as what is allowed down here, and also have a little more discussion about should we be allowing non-residents to bring things here? Obviously, we already have a limit for no commercial haulers and no lot clearance. I agree with that. This should not be happening, but I need a little more time on that. The other thing, what is down there, I'm thinking probably needs to be chipped relatively soon versus putting it off. And I'd like to be able to tell them to get prices to have that done. So maybe at our next meeting, we can actually address that and authorize that to happen.
Yep, so have him seek those out, and I'll get them on the agenda for next week.
Great, thank you. As far as recreation, thinking about, there are teams that are looking to be playing. We have guidelines from governor's office that basically for baseball and softball, which are the key things. It's not supposed, they're not supposed to be practicing, they're not supposed to be doing any organized training until after July 6th. And they're going to need to have a a plan in place for personal protection, and they're gonna have to submit those plans to us. Peter is working on what we're gonna require and is getting back to us with the logistics of how we do it. But there's, in my mind, I'm thinking, we need to be thinking about how are we going to disinfect things, bathrooms, bleachers, areas that people are using at the park, and try to get some more information. I don't think we're gonna have that all set before our next meeting, but the idea is that baseball, softball, not to even start practicing down there until after July 6th, and they have to submit to us an approved plan for personal protection.
Yeah, we want to get our kids, particularly since they've been pent up at home with their parents for a long time, we want, I know the parents want to get them out of the house, kids want to play, we want to get them there as soon as we can. We just have to ensure that we do it within the confines of the requirements from the state. A lot of people are pointing to, it says you can open up on July 6th. Well, that's what the governor said, if you do this, and nobody's talking about the parts, if you do this, and it's not simple. There's talks of, disinfect the bats in between. I mean, and the onus is on the group. I've actually talked with some representatives of the groups to come up with a safety plan, just like we have had to do for town hall to open up town employees. Our town employees every day, as part of our safety plan, have to take a self-evaluation that requires taking their temperature. They have to affirm that they haven't been in contact with anybody positive. They haven't gone to a hotspot in the US. They haven't been exposed to somebody who was positive. Every day they have to certify that. These are the things that go on behind the scenes, so this town is compliant with the requirements from the state. And it's no different for whether, it's a sporting event, practice, they have to be in place. So, we're working along the way. I appreciate the rec committee that is working with our rec leader to get those plans, out there and before the board so that we're all okay with it, we're comfortable with it. The unfortunate news is that, like the governor today just shut down at midnight tonight. You cannot come into New York State from places like Florida unless you do a 14-day quarantine. We are seeing almost half the states in the US having huge escalation in positives. We just don't want to be in a position where we're contributing to that. And our residents expect that from us. I know there's individuals that personally are unhappy with the pace this is going along, but at the end of the day, I will always put the public health interest ahead of personal interest. And so that's where we are.
When Peter and I met today, he's got a lot of information. He's going to put it together in a way that's easier for us to disseminate and get it back to us. He'd like to have us prepared if we want to have a discussion in the next meeting to be able to, so we can get into the information kind of gathered, so you're not having to go through all these different papers.
Very good. We're almost out of time.
Real quick, I got one quick.
Yep. Councilmember.
Kyle and I have been working with the residents up there in Dansville Road. I'm going, it's been going for a long time. Stormwater issues and drainage on the property. Put out the guys that, let them know what we might do, what not to do. One of the issues that I saw there was the drainage ditches along Route 32 and 7 seem to be pretty clogged up. And I know Kyle talked to you about getting DOT out there. So one of the gentlemen I was talking to him last week, and was, I know, how many people down there? I said, and heard, when you call down to DOT, you have a hydrant the next day. The guy brought another guy up the next day, who looked over there, we got marks on the road. We're gonna go up through those ditches. That isn't the solution to the entire problem over there, but it is one of the pieces of the puzzle. So it was nice to, I don't know why, it's not enough to do that there. So we shot right over and took care of it. So pleased with that, and now our continue to work with the down there, anything we can possibly do with all. So they're very happy with what's going on.
Yeah, that's good, and I've actually been through that drill previous year. Had folks up there from DOT, very responsive. You know, we were coming into the winter season for where they just take care of roads, for road safety, snow and ice. And then they were hoping to come back, and COVID hit. And they actually looked at several scenarios. One was to dig a deep, like dry well where you get down to a different soil type where the water would flow from the surface down. They did test drillings on that. Turns out that's all heavy clay all the way down. That wouldn't work. They looked at surface drainage possibilities. There's not enough elevation drop between that development and the intersection of State 32-197. So then they went and they surveyed and they marked the possibility of running it through the back of the private property owner's property there to go underneath Selfridge Road. So they looked at a lot of things. They keep looking. You just heard they looked again. You know, hopeful that they come up with a solution, but haven't gotten there. Anything else? If not, we've got 3 minutes for the next meeting, and entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.